I think it's really important to start with the end in mind. And so if we have a look at some of the financial instruments disclosures that actually apply to everybody, and so they are giving disclosure about your expected loss rates, the rates that apply from a percentage perspective across the different areas. So your ageing analysis, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. What do you expect to lose from your customers in those categories for particularly your trade receivables? Now, everybody has trade receivables, not every customer pays. So I think that's the piece that actually impacts everybody. And I think as well, if we take it a step further, if you've got corporate customers, they all have credit ratings and things. So what part of that credit rating do you actually take into account and consider? If I take a typical industry in Australia, the mining industry, it has its ups and downs. So there'd be some times when those receivables from the mining industry would pay well, other times when they're a bit slow, and that actually affects your cash flow and what you're getting in from an effective rate. So take that into account as well. The other piece is, say, the utilities or telco space where there's lots and lots of trade receivables. And I think part of that is actually just getting the data. And so while we need to take into account what we think the expectations of payments are, in that utility space, really we just need to know what customers right now are paying and have that a bit more succinct for the information. So I think there's a lot of work that people can do to support these disclosures that are required for accounts receivable. But there's a few other areas, okay, if that's all right to talk about also in financial instruments. You can tell I'm excited about it. So I think companies need to watch out for what needs to be fair valued. There's a lot of things we think, let's just carry that at amortised cost, but actually some of the things we need to carry at fair value going forward under the new standards. Say you've got a receivable which is based on your commodity price in the future. You know, I've shipped some iron ore off to China and they're going to pay based on the iron ore price on the day that they get the delivery. Fairly reasonable. We actually need to value that based on the iron ore price and the day they get delivery. That's fair value. That's not the original amortised cost amount. So we need to update the valuation for that. Also, a lot of companies actually sell off their receivables to a bank, move the problem aside. And so if you actually de-recognise it off your balance sheet in those circumstances, you're not actually holding that receivable to collect the cash flows. You're actually holding it to sell to someone else, the bank. And so you have to fair value that. You have to recognise the value you're going to get from the bank for those receivables, because that's really what's happening in your market. It's different if you haven't taken them off your balance sheet because you're still considered to collect the contractual cash flows. So you need to consider those. Other things, some companies hold investments in convertible notes. And so for those investments, it's not just the debt, the principal and interest they're getting, but they could potentially get shares, and they need to value that potential of the shares as well. And then lastly, if you've got a fund investment, sometimes it might be the fund price, but that needs to be up to date, particularly if there's underlying shares and equity stocks. So there's a few areas there that need to be considered for the fair value as well.